Hello, hello, hello!
Hey, hey!
Welcome to another exciting podcast, Finger Guns.
Consensual
Consensual.
conversations. Oh my God, we have so much good stuff to talk about today.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Okay, so we're going into holiday season. This episode we wanted to be a really fun one. We're going to have a lot of different conversations about consent and sexual assault and all of the trauma that we're trying to stop.
We're going to define a lot. We're going to give some resources and advice.
But in this episode, we want to talk about, wow, what a wonderful swath of options are available to us these days.
Within the context of relationships.
Yeah.
And there are truly so many options.
Yeah. So, like many of you, growing up looking at the media and space, I was presented with the singular option of relationship. And it's weird to even say that because my parents got divorced when I was very young, and my dad had maybe got engaged probably close to 20 times. So
who has time for that?
I don't know.
Almighty.
I don't know. It got to the point that he would say, "Hey, so and so and I just got engaged," and I would go, "Okay." It was just casual conversation in our dynamic. However, as a youngling, I was like, "Oof, I don't want to be like my dad. If I'm gonna grow up, I'm gonna find that one person. They're gonna be the right person. We're gonna get married,
and it'll be great forever.
And it'll be great forever." And the interesting thing about the world, well, it's not necessarily that the world has changed, because the relationships models that we're talking about have existed
for a very long time.
Since people have been having relationships.
But also perhaps have not been openly spoken about or openly accepted.
Yeah. They come in and out of popularity. And right now, we're in a very interesting relationships renaissance, where a lot of people are saying, you know what? I don't know if the standard relationship, the standard quote-unquote monogamy relationship works for me.
The lifelong monogamous commitment seems a little intimidating. Maybe even a little unrealistic for some people.
And also that there are shades within the lifelong monogamous relationship that we're also going to dive into. Mm-hmm. There are many colors and shades. So one thing I want to emphasize before we even start is we're going to talk to you about a lot of different relationship models. It's key to understand that you might find a relationship model that works really well for you. But that doesn't mean that it's going to work with every partner that you find.
That is very true. A lot of these models require some really specific skills, and a lot of those skills revolve around things like self-knowledge, accountability, communication, and vulnerability. And to be fair, not everybody is ready to do really intense work around that because it's hard. It's not easy, and it's scary, and that's okay.
Yeah. Also, changing a relationship model may not fix your relationship.
Oh, God, no.
Because there is no perfect way of doing anything, and therefore every relationship model that we talk about comes with its own set of risks, its own set of issues, its own set of things that need to be negotiated, and its own set of things that you need to work on personally in order to even inhabit that space.
And its own set of rewards.
But
risk versus reward.
Yeah.
You need to decide that for yourself. You need to decide that with your partner/partners.
And it's kind of like, I would put this out there for people. Some people think about stepping into like a stable job. Like, I'm going to go be... God, what are stable jobs now? I'm going to go be an IT.
Yeah.
I'm going to go be an engineer. Or I'm going to go be an artist. And you go, okay, as an engineer, I know I'm always going to have work. I'm going to have all these things. And that brings me a lot of safety and comfort and opportunities for other things in my life.
Absolutely. And then some people might look at show up every day at the same place for the same amount of time, and they think, I am going to emotionally wither, I'm going to be miserable, I need variation, I don't mind going some stretches without a stable income because that is not the top of my priority list.
And some people go, I want to be an artist. I want to have a wild and crazy life and where I travel and do all of these different things. Maybe I'm not as stable. I've got my own issues, but I signed up for that.
That's fine. The rule is you are allowed to decide what your priorities are in your work life and in your relationships. You get to choose.
I was using a metaphor.
What's a metaphor?
I was relating our work choices to our relationship choices.
Oh.
I'm just now
Wow.
realizing that you thought I was just talking about work. No. I was using it as a metaphor so that people were more open.
Well, I wanted to round out the metaphor and bring it on home.
No, and you
sir.
were right. It applies to both. Okay. So, kick things off. We're going to talk about monogamy. Now, we've also addressed that, like, monogamy, even these days, doesn't come standard anymore. Monogamy has also existed throughout history in a variety of different ways. And when I say history, I highly recommend looking up. I don't even know how you Google this. I've just picked up different things from different books of like ways people have had relationship models that have changed.
Actually, a book I would recommend about that, just to start exploring like anthropological differences in relationship styles, is a book called Sex at Dawn.
Yes. Sex at Dawn. One of my favorite segments when people talk about, that homosexuality was a new thing, or it's weird if like men are really close with each other. What's interesting is during Roman times, it was actually weird if you were interested in your wife, and and it was more common that
Dude, you want to fuck your wife? That's so gay.
Yes. That's what it was like, because your wife was often there as sort of like a merger or of your houses or a business partner of whatever.
A transaction.
And if you were, especially if you were a soldier, the people that you had the most sex with and that you emotionally loved the most were
And
your
trusted the
were your
most.
fellow soldiers.
Absolutely.
And so you always had your Mr. on the side. That was your real love. And then you had to have sex with your wife because you had
That's
to.
how you get kids.
Yeah, you had kids.
And that's how you perpetuate the bloodline.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was the norm for a big chunk of history.
That's the thing. When we talk about, if we mention the word normal or
Yeah.
common, that's only in our limited view of history because,
Our very recent
yeah,
view of history.
very recent view of history, because just like trends in clothes, just like trends in ideal body types, all of that changes over the course of hundreds and thousands of years. So have human relationships.
Yeah. Things come in, things go out. But we're talking about monogamy. So what is monogamy? Well,
monogamy is what I would call the dominant culture. It is what you see in most movies, what you hear about in most songs, TV shows, commercials, what I'm sure most people saw to some degree modeled for them in their home. Even if perhaps it wasn't always exact
Exactly what was
monogamy,
happening, yeah.
it's that's like the aspirational norm, right?
sexual exclusivity.
Yes.
That is the thing that you are ultimately vying for.
I have my one person. I only engage sexually and often emotionally with this one person, and that's it forever. And usually, if I fulfill any of those needs anywhere else, it's a violation.
Yes. So these days people talk about emotional cheating. And I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. I think the way that we're going to break a lot of different things down is it comes down to intention.
Yes.
So, emotional cheating. Am I emotionally cheating because I have a very strong emotional bond with a person of the sex I'm attracted to?
I don't think that necessarily classifies emotional cheating. I think, but this is just me, lots of people have different definitions. When I think emotional cheating comes into play is when I may not be having sex with this person that's not my spouse or my partner, but I am prioritizing their needs over the needs of the partner that I have agreed to commit to. I think there's something very key in that.
Yeah. That's the prioritizing is a really big deal. So it's not saying that you can't have other outside emotional connections in which you're vulnerable and open with that person, but if you are only vulnerable and open with that new person and not with your current partner, I think you can elevate that to emotional cheating space.
Absolutely. But that's one of the things that I personally really dislike about culture around monogamy is that, monogamy means that you are not allowed to emotionally connect with a person of the gender you are attracted to, which in and of itself for us bi folks, we're like, oh, so we can't have friends at all. Right. Well, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
But I think generally it's a good thing to have vulnerable and somewhat intimate friendships with other people outside of your partner.
And I think that those relationships are really important, especially like this is all saying that you're not leaving your partner behind, which is the primary
not neglecting
thing.
the
Not
needs
neglecting
of your
the
partner.
needs of your partner, because we all need those deep emotional connections, and we need those outside of our partnerships because one, our partner can't be everything, which is sort of like a main thing that comes into conflict with the monogamy structure, depending on how people do the monogamy structure.
Yes.
You may meet a person that's a soundboard if you're not in therapy to like talk to about things that you're going through with your partner.
And there are ways to do that without violating privacy. There are ways to do that without like hurting the bond that you and your partner have. But, sometimes feeling distant from your partner is a real thing, and there's something you have to work through, and perhaps they're not in a place to engage with you about it. So what do you do?
Your relationships, for any of those of you that are out there that have been in long-term relationships, relationships happen in cycles. No matter how good they are, no matter how good of a communicator you are, your relationship will have peaks that you're feeling really close, really intimate with your partner, and valleys
Deep
where
valleys.
you're not. And the only thing that makes that real trouble is if you hit a valley and you go, oh my God, we don't feel as connected as we always did. There must be something wrong in our relationship. And then you start tearing apart your relationship to examine all the things that could be wrong. And it's like, oh, we could just be at a valley.
Or you're unwilling to do that examination and you say, this relationship is over.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause that is also an option that a lot of people take.
Okay. So monogamy, we've talked about extreme monogamy, which is just like, you can't have friends of the sex that you're attracted to.
A lot of people's version of monogamy is you can't watch porn.
You can't watch porn.
Can't go to a strip club.
You can't engage in any thought experiment. That is like they don't. If you think about somebody else while you're having sex, that could be an offense in your relationship. It basically goes from we're sexually exclusive, which means every ounce of sexual energy that you have as a human being is directed towards me or not at all.
Exactly.
There are some extreme versions of monogamy that are like, if you're masturbating, that's a betrayal. Even if you're masturbating about me, your partner,
Still I'm not there.
I'm not there. How you don't need to do that. I'm here. I satisfy all of your needs.
I'm pretty confident in calling that unhealthy. I don't think that monogamy in and of itself
I
is
think it's
unhealthy, but
super
I
unhealthy,
think
yeah.
that specifically is a very unhealthy dynamic. No matter what, I think you should have the freedom to explore yourself by yourself. No matter what.
No matter what. So take that to the bank and cash it. All right. So now monogamy. Teetering into the non-monogamy space. Some people might go, okay, we are exclusive and I accept the very real reality that my partner is attracted to other people.
And that other people will be attracted to my partner.
That's a big deal. That's a hard step for some people, even though it is very real. And like people, like there's some people that are in the more traditional space that like will kind of joke about it and say, oh, you know, who's your celebrity exception? That if this celebrity came in town, you know,
Where's your laminated index card of
Yeah.
the 5 celebrities I have to give you a hall pass for?
right? That they'll joke about it, but that at least is an acknowledgement that like your partner finds other people attracted to. However,
Yeah, it's a good jumping off point.
my wife's person is Chris Evans.
Chris Evans.
And listen,
All right.
one, he's a dashingly handsome man.
I mean, he's no Hugh
And-
Jackman, but I
and
understand.
for sure. But the thing is like, couldn't in my space, I couldn't be happier for her.
If you get the opportunity,
Please, I'd do it too. I don't know if it would work out between me and him. I would totally do it. But the thing is, there was a lot of people that are kind of teetering in that space. It's weird that they jump to celebrity as if like that's not going to make them more insecure about everything.
Right, like could you imagine if my boyfriend comes back and he goes, "Oh man, it was the craziest thing. I just banged Jennifer Lawrence." I'd be like, "Okay. I'm happy for you, but also a lot of feelings to process."
For
here."
sure. For sure. Yeah. Oh, only like the most well-known and famous and like attractive people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole pass. So,
And in LA, sometimes that is an actual option.
right. So, in the monogamy space, people will often go, "Okay, well, I'd feel more comfortable." This little dance that they do. I'd feel more comfortable if like we did something together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that we can both be there and I can still join in on this experience.
Yeah.
I'm still a part of it. I'm not being ignored, excluded.
Yeah. So, navigating the three-way. I read this great book. It's called The Threesome Handbook. And it is not a book that is for people like, this is how you make threesomes happen. It's actually a book about how you manage and process the emotional experience that
Right.
comes along with making a three-way happen.
Not about how to coerce someone into having a threesome with you and your partner, or how to coerce your partner into having a threesome that they don't want, because neither of those scenarios are cool.
Yeah.
And they'll both turn out pretty badly. But if everybody is on board, a lot of times, for those of us who have fantasies and watch porn, I don't know if you've ever tried to make any of your fantasies come true, but sometimes things feel differently in real life than they do watching them or fantasizing about them in your head. And very often
Yes.
threesomes can be one of those really big explosive things that feel differently in the moment.
Yes, absolutely. Biggest warning that I could put out there for anybody stepping into the sort of the group play experience with their partner. Biggest mistake that people make is they approach the situation like checking boxes. Huge, huge, huge issue. Because here's what happens. Someone goes, "Oh my God, I think a threesome's going to happen right now. I've always imagined all of these things, which means we need to do this and this. We need to check off this position. We need to blah, blah, blah."
You need to rotate 45 degrees and turn your...
Yeah. Okay. The checking off boxes person is not ever going to be present to the very fast moving, extreme dynamics that change when you're in a group situation with people.
So we've talked before about staying in the moment and staying present with
Checking
one partner.
in
Checking in
they
before you check out.
They check out.
They check out.
Yeah.
Now imagine having to have that awareness for 2 different people with 2 totally different sets of feelings and thoughts and boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's more work. It can be more fun, but it is also more work.
It's a lot of work.
Because a little PSA to couples who would like to invite a third into their bedroom. As a past third who has been in that dynamic with a couple, we're people too. We are not there to be a human fleshlight. We are not there to be a human performer. We are not there to be fetishized. If that's something you would like, there are options for that, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But nothing feels worse than being invited into a dynamic and then realizing that your needs are at the bottom of the list, that you're just there to help these two live out a fantasy.
Yeah.
It's not cool.
Other really great piece of advice that I'll give everybody that I got from the book, and I absolutely fell in love with this. You treat stepping into a group situation the same way that you would do dating. Because you know what's better than having one threesomes?
What?
Having a lot of them.
I can vouch for that.
Right. Right. So here's the big thing. When I say that you treat it like dating, it means that you do it in steps, kind of like the small steps we were talking about, which is like, hey, let's set the bar here. That's like, well, I'll just go out and grab drinks, see how we vibe with each other. That is the only thing on the table that night.
That's it.
Just grabbing drinks, grabbing coffee in the middle of the day.
What are the vibes?
What are the vibes? Next date, you go, okay, maybe this time, I don't know, maybe some kissing happenings, maybe some touching happenings. Let's see. Let's just like see where we're at. But like, we're not even jumping into the sex space. We're just just courting.
And also, let's see if we can open up a conversation about this and start to understand, what do you like? What do we like? What's on the table? What's off the table? Unless we say something else in the moment.
Yeah.
Those negotiations and that communication can start to happen, because the last place you want to have those conversations are like in the heat of the moment. That is the toughest scenario in which to all of a sudden negotiate boundaries.
Yeah. And then after this group has gotten to know each other, has played a little bit and says, oh, this is good. I feel comfortable with you. I feel good that I can call a veto and stop something, or that we can pause things and pick things back up. You've worked this dynamic, then you can go, hey, I've always wondered about trying this thing now that there's two other people in this space.
What do you think?
What do you think? All right. And then who knows? Maybe it can evolve into a thing that happens on a regular basis. So that's a sort of like a next step outside of monogamy. You're still doing it together, but it's something that is sort of like adding that new relationship energy back into your collective space.
Yes. And a lot of that new relationship energy can come from, you after a while, you don't see your partner as you did the first time you met. In my experience, one of the lovely benefits of a threesome or of group play is all of a sudden you get to see other people react to your partner, and you start to see them through the eyes of somebody that like just met them, and they're this exciting new being and that's ready to explore. It kind of resets the clock a little bit in that way.
The resetting of the clock, I think, and this is part of the why there are different relationship models, it happens all around the dynamic. So even just intimately flirting and engaging with somebody makes you reset your own clock. Having a simple touch, just any kind of like caress that starts to happen with this new person makes you go, oh, this is so different than my partner's body. And then you start to go back and you go, oh yeah, I used to, when we started dating, this is how sex initiated between us. Not we know the steps that we got to get this.
We could do this.
We could do this like half asleep at this point. You re-wake up, and that's part of the reason why couples will expand a little bit outside the monogamy space.
And I will also say that in between acknowledging that maybe there's a desire to step outside the monogamous space and actually doing it, in between there are things like pillow talk, like
just talking about it.
Dirty talk, like what would you find hot about this? Tell me what you want to see, what you want to do. There's a super fun game I like to call Stranger Danger, where you can use an alternate messaging app. You can use like Signal or Google Voice and get a new number, and you can agree with your partner to like meet up in a public place and pretend like you don't know each other. There are steps that you can take along the way to sort of hit reset on that clock and get a bit of that energy. And then afterwards, well, thank God we did that, where we're both still in a safe space with each other. Now, how do you feel about it?
And we talked about on the first podcast about having like challenges of being like, all right, like we're going to start from the beginning in our relationship.
Yep.
Um,
There's also something else I would like to say really quickly about threesomes. I find a lot of times in often the straight heteronormative couple world that there is a lot more openness to inviting a femme person into the bedroom than there is a masc person into the bedroom. In our in the circles I run in, we call that a one penis policy. Only one penis allowed in the room at a time. Even though penis doesn't necessarily relate to femme or masc,
Yep.
but just for the sake of brevity here.
yeah.
And I would really strongly encourage y'all to perhaps be a little bit more accepting of any gender that you or your partner are attracted to, or at least like wouldn't mind seeing. I think a lot of women tend to just say yes to inviting a woman in there, even though they may not necessarily be attracted to women, or maybe they're kind of curious but very hesitant. But there's a very solid, like, absolutely not, no other men are allowed in here. That's crazy. Just as a by the by, maybe work on or examine why that reaction is so strong. And I'll just say that sometimes as a femme person, having to masc people in the room with you, guess where all the attention goes? And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah. Well, not always.
Not always,
Not always.
but often.
I have to give Super Dark Void a huge props. He said, "You down with OPP?" You get it?
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not down with OPP.
Thank you for that pun.
Personally, I'm not.
So, riffing off of that, stepping into the next space. So there's the threesome. This is the old school way of opening things up, which is swinging. Swinging is still sort of within the monogamy realm, but
Things
now
are
what
only
you're-
happening when we're both present.
when we're both present, but now we're talking about couples hanging out with couples and them going
either two couples or more than two couples
right
in a bigger group setting.
Yeah. Lot of pluses and minuses to this. I will say, especially from any of my friends that have been in this space or just various conversations or experiences that I've had, these dynamics can be tough because finding the perfect group of everyone that's equally attracted to everybody else is a very rare thing.
A lot of times what can happen is I'm into that person of that couple. Well, I'm not into that person. And when it's just four people together in a room and there's somebody you don't want to engage with, that is a really, really tricky thing to navigate.
Yeah.
And I am not at all an advocate for put yourself in a sexual situation you don't want to be.
Well, so this is and talking about we're talking about the pros and cons of each of these different things. The swinging space. What kind of people are stepping into the swinging space? A lot of the times it's people that are just interested in checking off the box. That
Yes.
are not actually like, oh, I want to do this to sort of like add to this experience of my own partnership. It's like, I want to have a group thing.
I want to swap wives.
I want to swap wives. And if that's enough for any of those people in that space, knock your socks off.
And also, as the wife in that scenario, or if your partner really gets off on the idea of like swapping you out, watching somebody with you, and that's something that turns you on as well, then that's fine if y'all want to join in together on that. But I do find that sometimes swinging dynamics can be a teensy bit impersonal, sometimes even a little dehumanizing, which isn't always a bad thing, but it can go that way.
Yeah. So we've seen in the media and back in the 70s the key party.
Ah, the key party.
The randomized
with
swinging.
the upside down pineapple outside.
Why is the pineapple upside down? I don't know about this.
Upside down pineapple is just like an old fashioned signal for like swingers parties.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why? It's
Couldn't-
just someone just did it one day.
It just was.
Great.
It just was.
When you're talking about, okay, I'm stepping into a space where there's the randomization of who I'm going to be with, that can be really stressful. It's
Yeah.
something that you definitely have to be in the mood for. I don't know. If anyone that's like God, it's not something that like I've found myself ever drawn to, of just being like, man, I've been a part of like play festivals and I've gotten a bad show and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'll do my best. I'm not going to not, be a team player here, but
Sure.
it's not going to be something I'm going to invite.
It can be
my friends
rough
to.
going. Generally speaking, what I will say for couples specifically that want to start engaging in group play, whether it's threesomes or a sex party or swinging, whatever it is, I highly suggest that you work out your boundaries beforehand. Like, what am I okay to do and what am I not okay to do? I also suggest that you create some kind of a check-in system. A lot of times with couples, you can just like make eye contact and they'll know from a look in your eye whether or not what's happening is okay or not.
Yeah.
But also there should be some sort of either verbal or nonverbal signal of like, hey, can you help me out? I need a break here. Or, hey, like this is overwhelming. We need to both step away and regroup, reconnect. If you have those things in place, then those dynamics, I feel, are a lot easier to navigate, and it will save you a ton of emotional fallout and perhaps even feelings of betrayal afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. We're expanding that monogamous relationship out into communities, clubs,
parties.
So these dynamics, especially if you're sort of like stepping into that space, there's lots of communities depending on where you live. There's definitely a lot in Los Angeles or in like major cities. There are always underground ones in like small towns, which are probably not as easy to find as the ones in the cities.
But they are everywhere. They are.
And what these community spaces offer, there's a lot of best practices, sort of like stepping into the community space. But one of the big things is like when you step into the space, sort of just like with a relationship, you kind of have to prove that you are a trustworthy duo entering this space.
Yes. That you can navigate social cues.
Yes.
That you know how to step into a space conscious of respect and consent, that you are not just going to dominate a space with your energy. I feel like those are a lot of faux pas, and especially that you're not going to walk into this space with this tidy little list of expectations.
Check-in boxes.
Right.
And got to stop.
And if you don't have those expectations met, then you've been slighted somehow.
Yeah.
That's not how it goes.
So, fun advantage about stepping into these spaces, if you're in a monogamous couple and you're looking to kind of open yourselves, is that you can go to these spaces and not dive in.
No.
You can just sort of be in this space and you're like, ooh, there's a lot of sexy energy in this space. There's a lot of, oh my God, I think those people are making out. And then, oh, I think those people are doing something other than making out. And then
you can go and be a voyeur.
Yeah. And that might just be enough. Oh my God. If you were in this relationship for a long time, you've got kids you're managing, and you and your partner go out into town and you just happen to step into a space where there's a lot of sexual energy going on, that might be the juice that you need to go home, have fucking awesome sex again, and call it a day.
And sometimes walking into that space, just looking at how other people might be looking at you or looking at your partner, even if you choose not to engage, but just like seeing sometimes that other people are attracted to you, that other people are attracted to your partner, it can renew your own sense of confidence. And it can also give you a little bit of, yeah, the person on my arm is hot. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a little perspective shift.
Yeah.
Now, in these spaces, again, maybe you make eyes with somebody across the room and the vibe is there and you go, okay, let's try this out. And your partner is right there. The two of you can kind of navigate things as you go because you've had the conversation ahead
beforehand
of time.
Of what is okay and what's not.
Yeah. So these are all this is sort of like a tiered scale of like, yeah, we're monogamous.
We're monogamish.
And we are faithful to each other, and we do all of these things that we talked about together.
It's always together.
It's always together.
We are here as a unit. We are here as a couple. We are here to experience these things with each other. And a lot of times the goal of that is we are here to grow together as a couple.
Yes.
But also there are ways to grow together as a couple and develop your intimacy while doing sexual activities where your partner is not in the room. That is also possible.
That brings us to the next tier, which is
non-monogamy.
Non-monogamy.
Non-monogamy is sort of an umbrella term.
Ethical non-monogamy.
I actually call it consensual non-monogamy these days.
Consensual non-monogamy.
Just because
No, I dig it.
ethical implies a judgment,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
consensual is, we've talked about it, we've both agreed to this. I like to use consensual non-monogamy, even though the more popular term is ethical non-monogamy, or ENM, as it's usually abbreviated.
We abbreviate everything. Everything's abbreviated.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
CBT in different circles means very different things.
Yeah. Consensual non-monogamy.
Consensual non-monogamy. That is an umbrella term, kind of in the way that these days queer is a bit of an umbrella term, meaning anybody not straight. And within that, there are several different definitions. Non-monogamy is the same way, under the umbrella of non-monogamy, which basically means not monogamy.
Yeah.
And anything that's like, we are not sexually beholden only to one person.
It means not strict monogamy.
Yes.
Because the first rung on that tier is a term called monogamish, which is consensual non-monogamy with the occasional exception. So when we were talking about before about doing things together, monogamish is about creating momentary exceptions. So it's like not things that happen every now and then. So like somebody might say, and this is a big one, for people that are attracted to multiple genders and makeups, that you go, okay, I don't know, I'm with you, but I don't know if I'm ready to have the rest of my life never having had this experience with either the same sex or whatever gender you're not, or whatever binary or non-binary or whatever makeup you're not. I don't want to be missing the other flavor in my life forever. And so there may be exceptions for that, of being like, okay, you're allowed to have outside solo experiences with whatever flavor of ice cream that I am not.
With only this specific these specific genders.
Yes.
And that's it. You cannot engage with someone of the same gender as me because I'm already providing this.
Right. That's one
form.
That's one model.
Another that I think a lot of older generations kind of adhere to. I've certainly heard members of my family of the older generations talk about this. If you're out of town.
I was just going to say that,
If you're out of town, and often that comes along with what we call a don't ask, don't tell policy.
Yes.
Do what you want. I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Don't bring it home.
So I think that's important to address the don't ask, don't tell thing, because there are sort of like two dynamic approaches in this situation. Either hearing about your partner and their experiences outside of your relationship is fueling for you, or it causes you a tremendous amount of stress, but you still want them to have it.
Or sometimes it could even be both.
Or sometimes it could be both.
Where you have a very confused moment of arousal.
Which we'll get into down the tiers. That one's coming up. And so the don't ask, don't tell policy is sort of like, hey, I want you to have this thing. I don't really want to know about it. I want to kind of like in all, intents and purposes, imagine that we are monogamous and this thing never happened, but you are getting those needs met. And when I say like just getting those needs met, it's not a flippant like, oh, you need to get off. Especially when you're in long-term relationships, you reach a point where you go, and I've had this conversation with my wife of like, hey, there's a lot of things I can provide you. You know what I can't provide you? Looking at you like you are a new person that I've never experienced before. I just can't. That's like a one big thing. And that thing is a big deal.
It is a really big deal.
That somebody is attracted to you just because you're there.
And also, like, that energy of somebody seeing you as if for the first time, or seeing you as if you're a present on Christmas morning that they're unwrapping. I do think there's a very small percentage of the population that can carry that energy consistently in a long distance relationship. I don't think it's realistic for most people. I think
it's insane for the people that can do it.
I mean,
long term. Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
I absolutely do too. But that is like, there is something about that falls into this category of NRE, or new relationship energy, where you're just like, "Ooh, I'm a little obsessed with you in this moment," and you're just like, you're not even a human, and you're like this goddess, or you're the sex god, or you're whatever, and like, my eyes, everything in me is just hungry for you, because I don't have a lot of familiarity.
And that's it. So what you are saying in this scenario is, in the don't ask, don't tell, I want you to have all of what Rachel just went through.
Sounds great, doesn't it?
I want you to have all that thing, but I don't want to know about it for my own insecurity reasons. And when you bring that energy back into our relationship, that's why I'm doing this.
Yes.
You getting to reset that reset button is a great thing for us both.
I'd love to give a little metaphor that I've used to try and explain one of the appeals of non-monogamy to other people. Let's say that you have prime rib at home, and you eat prime rib every single night, and you love prime rib. It's amazing. It's the best food you've ever put in your mouth. But you know what? Sometimes you have a craving for McDonald's. Sometimes you have a craving for chicken. Sometimes you crave something other than your absolute favorite thing. It doesn't mean that your favorite thing is no longer your favorite thing. It just means that sometimes when you have a chicken sandwich, the next time you have prime rib, it tastes even better.
Yes. Let's definitely put this out there for everybody. Stepping outside and having encounters outside of your primary relationship doesn't mean they're going to be good. A lot of times
they're not.
A lot of times you just stepping out and even just being like going on a date with somebody, or like kissing a new person, can make you go, Jesus. Like,
thank God I've got a meal waiting for me at home. Oh my God.
Partner at home.
And that's one of the really nice ways that I think non-monogamy can foster gratitude, because either way, if the date goes really well, you're like, wow, my partner was cool with me having this amazing experience. I'm so grateful to them. Or, oh, that was a nightmare. I'm so grateful that I have my partner at home. It's like two ways to get to the same conclusion, which is enhanced feelings of affection and gratitude for the partnership that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing in the monogamish space is just sort of like special occasions. They can be a myriad of things, of being like, I'm going to a high school reunion.
Or happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Or happy 40th birthday.
Or happy 40th birthday. Or my crush from blah, blah, blah is in town. And
my partner and I once had simultaneous experiences like that. He was home visiting his family, and he had been like, he stayed in touch with a lot of people from high school, and he and a crush of his from high school started chatting again. And it turns out that, like, she had kind of thought he was attractive back in the day. Mm-hmm. He was too nervous to do anything. And it turns out that they were both kind of open to this happening. Meanwhile, I had a dear friend from high school that we've hooked up with on and off throughout the years, and we had just gotten back in touch. So simultaneously, on opposite coasts, my partner was hooking up with one of his high school crushes, and I was hooking up with one of my high school crushes.
Special occasions.
Special occasions.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a special occasion, which was just, I had in a previous open relationship of mine, I was doing a show, and I was doing a show with twins.
Actual twins?
They're actual twins. That we had a a group connection with, and my partner at the time said, "You gotta do it." She was actually more upset. She's like, I'm sad that this didn't land on my own plate, and I'll be really mad at you if you don't. If you didn't. That was a special occasion.
I'm so curious.
Anyway, moving on.
They were
twins
sisters,
yeah.
And they were in the room with each other.
I'm not going to get into the details.
That's fair. I was just so curious. My apologies.
Yeah, they were wonderful people that I had a really great dynamic with, and
that's great.
And it was great.
Awesome.
And we were all very cool. So the next tier. Okay, so we talked about monogamish, which is just like we're monogamous. We've got these little mini exceptions that happen infrequently.
Special circumstances that we have both agreed to.
Yeah.
Is the real key here. We're not talking about cheating or infidelity.
Yes.
Because in non-monogamous
there's still
circles,
cheating.
You can still cheat. Guess what? Whatever the boundaries of your relationship are, if you veer outside of them, that is still infidelity. That is still cheating. But sleeping with other people isn't always cheating. If you work it out with your partner and you both agree to it, I think you're in the clear. Yeah. It's consensual.
It's consensual. So the next tier in the non-monogamy space is an open relationship. This one is something that is very much blossoming in the United States right now. People are defining it in a variety of different ways. An open relationship is basically, it's kind of like that sign that's on a door, which is like, we flip the sign over and we're open for swaths of time unless we feel like flipping the sign back over and we're closed. Mm-hmm. But as long as the sign is open, things can happen within the space.
We're open to connecting with other people. And a lot of people in the open space, it's a good idea to figure out what sort of dynamic you are looking for.
Yeah.
Are you looking for just a fuck buddy / friend with benefits? Are you looking for an actual friend with benefits? Do you want to form some kind of friendship-based emotional connection that still has sex as part of it? Are you looking to date someone else, but date casually? There's a lot of different things that people are looking for in this space, and it's helpful to decide what you're looking for to find somebody else that's looking for the same thing.
Yeah. The boundaries is a very key part of this because there's obviously a tremendous amount of negotiation. Open does not mean free for all.
No. Just like monogamy, there are a set of agreed upon boundaries. And the thing that I personally really love about open relationships is that no matter what, you cannot assume any boundaries. Those conversations with your partner have to happen so you know what is okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
I think a very common boundary in open relationships is you can have sex with other people, but with barriers in place so we can manage the risk of STIs and birth control.
Yep.
It's not okay for you to not use barriers with other people. That's a super common and common sense one.
There can also be, again, everything is in tiers and everything is customized by the person that you're with. You can have an open relationship that's just like, we can make out with other people, but we don't do anything else.
Yeah, we can go flirt it with people at the bar and make out, but then you come home.
But then you can home. Yeah.
Or you can go home with other people, but no sleepovers. You have to come home to go to sleep.
Yeah. Another really big part of the boundary setting is vetoes. So those are also sort of like just setting hard boundaries that are not negotiable. So in one of my past open relationships, we had a bunch of different dynamics. It was great. She was someone that wanted to know what was going on in my space because it was something that was really exciting to her and arousing to her. And then there was a person that was in a very, very close friend of mine that we were like practically best friends. We were talking all the time, and we were out dancing one night, and it was a very intimate dancing that was going on. And my partner at the time was like, hey, I'm starting to feel uncomfortable about this dynamic that you have with this person. That's going to be a veto on this person.
So what happened?
I stopped it.
Hell yeah.
And that was a big thing. It went from like, because in her space, it wasn't just me having a physical connection with somebody or sort of building that relationship. It was another person that was like a huge part of my life. That like, if
There were a lot of emotional ties.
There were a lot of emotional ties, and were I to step over that space into making it an intimate relationship as well, that would have been a really, really, really big weight on our relationship, insecurities for her. And I was like, great. And here's we talked about this, honoring people's boundaries is very helpful. I said, absolutely. Stopped all the sort of flirtation, maintained my friendship with this person. And then that was it. And what that did was like, hey, the moment you say veto or no, the hammer comes down, it stops. And that means that you know that like moving forward, you always have that button wherever you're at.
And I will say, one of the things that makes a veto a viable option and a viable solution, it's kind of the same effect where when somebody curses all the time, using a curse word doesn't have a lot of impact. But if somebody doesn't curse a lot and all of a sudden they drop a fuck, you're like, oh man, I really need to pay attention to this. I find if you and your partner can trust each other to only use veto when you really, really need it. So some occasions that I've used veto, my partner was hooking up with this woman and she violated a boundary I didn't even know I had.
Which can happen.
I was outside the apartment and she cooked him a meal in our kitchen and then like didn't do the dishes.
And the dishes, which we've talked about on every episode.
But when I came home, I felt like that was a huge boundary violation that I didn't even know to talk about because it didn't even occur to me that it would come up.
Yeah.
But from then on, I was like, well, vetoing that activity forever. And also there were maybe 1 or 2 nights after that where he had plans with her and I just wasn't feeling emotionally secure enough to be okay with that happening. So I said, you know what? I need more of your attention and presence tonight. I'm not feeling great. I need to veto this. But I try to be very specific and conscious about how I use that veto. If every time you feel the slightest bit of discomfort, you use veto, I feel like that's going to lead to a lot of frustration. So the way you build trust in the veto is by really carefully picking and choosing when you need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another key element in the sort of like open definition space is that open relationships are not creating space for outside full relationships, meaning like you're not
typically no,
you're not adding in another partner
right
now. And this is something that like people have to kind of negotiate. Sometimes, depending on who you are, you may only be interested in intimately engaging with someone that you really know and that you have like a strong connection with before you even
and a lot of trust and comfort with, which is very valid.
Right. And so, in addition to that, they may only feel comfortable seeing the same person over and over again.
It's true.
And so it is then up to you and your partner to be like, okay, where are our boundaries here? When does this become a thing that like you actually have a full relationship outside of our relationship? Because that is part of the thing. We're not in a poly relationship, which we'll get into next. We're in an open relationship. Where do we start drawing the lines and like applying the veto or we need to move on or we need to change this dynamic or whatever?
And sometimes those lines can be blurry. Sometimes those lines can change because here's one of the main keys to any kind of non-monogamous dynamic. Your discomfort no longer becomes automatically a reason for your partner to change their behavior. Sometimes jealousy happens, oftentimes jealousy happens, but you feeling jealousy doesn't necessarily mean that they need to change something. A lot of times, jealousy just means that you need to sit down and really pick apart where the jealousy is coming from, talk yourself through it, and very often ask for a little bit of reassurance from your partner. Say, hey, I'm feeling a little insecure today. I want you to have this date and have a good time, but can you give me some words of affirmation? Can we spend a little quality time together before you go? Can I get a little bit of buffer because I need a little extra help today? And what a beautiful opportunity for your partner to rise and meet you in that need.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know most people ask this about like open relationships. They're like, well, how do you handle the jealousy aspect of things? It definitely comes in and out depending on the person.
You practice.
But what Rachel's talking about is it's an opportunity for the two of you to connect and go, okay, what's going on in your space? Great. Well, I'll tell you, this situation that I'm in means this to me. I'm getting this and this out of it. I don't feel this and this about it. You start becoming clear about the things that are going on in the dynamic of the relationship. And then there's also, and this is a really big thing, when you two may be great with your boundaries, that doesn't mean that other people are going to be.
That's true.
And that's something that I've established in past relationships that have been open is one of my boundaries is if this person starts trying to be invasive into our relationship or talk shit about our relationship, there's a lot of thing, and this definitely comes from a masculine space where they start to go, well, if you're here with me, obviously something's going wrong. There's like a lot of sort of like possession and things that go on.
Oh yeah.
And our thing in my previous dynamics was the moment that happens, it stops.
No.
It's
one of the vetoes is if you are not respectful of the boundaries in my relationship, or even worse, if you're totally uninterested in learning about the boundaries of my what I call a primary partnership. I have my primary partner.
You're not here to take over.
No, that is a massive red flag to me. That is something that is unacceptable.
The job is not open.
No.
No, we're not seeking outside applications. And I think that is a really big dynamic that happens sort of like people that are dating people in the open space are also going through their own situation of like, oh my God, I may be developing these very strong emotions. And also, this is not leading to a relationship.
Yeah. Or at least not a primary romantic relationship. And very often, sometimes it'll happen that one person develops feelings for the other. And I also want to acknowledge that sometimes if you are a secondary to someone who's in a primary partnership, that comes with its own set of like emotional peaks and valleys to deal with as well.
Yeah.
It's definitely not for everybody. I find in my dynamics and in my partner's dynamics, we do best with other people that are already in primary dynamics themselves. So there are similar matching wants, needs, and expectations.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always happen that way. And that needs to be approached with a little more delicacy.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody involved in these situations are people.
Yeah.
I think
their own
that
sets of
people,
needs.
and then that comes back to like the whole checking the box thing is like, I have seen this a lot. And again, every relationship dynamic has its issue. Every group of people has its issue. A relationship that I see a lot that happens in the open space is there are a lot of people that operate from the checking boxes space.
Yes.
Meaning, I've had friends that have had their relationships ruined because their partner is fucking always on the hunt. They make a new friend. Do you think they'd be interested? They like meet the barista gets their name right on their coffee. Do you think they'd be interested? There are some people that could be so nonstop about it, and that's not what open relationships. I mean, they can be if that's like what your dynamic
sometimes,
is.
but also like that's the exact kind of vibe that I am always so deeply afraid. I was like, no, to my partner, no matter what we do, we cannot put out that vibe that we're looking to fuck everything walking. It's not okay. It makes people uncomfortable. We cannot be those people. We can't. It's gross.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it. And it doesn't work very well.
No.
I mean, I guess you do get some numbers, but it's not good numbers. I mean, I'm not gonna knock that like people that put them like it's like people in the dating space that like ask out 100 people,
Sure.
Some sad person might go, yeah.
But again, that
but it
doesn't sound very enthusiastic.
It's not.
Does it?
It's not. good. I just want people to be aware of. And when I'm getting at with like checking the boxes is that you are focused on the act that is going to happen and not the person that you're with.
It's very goal oriented rather than experience oriented.
Yeah. It's about stepping into a space and being like, that's a person. They are attractive enough for me to do the deed. I would love to have walked out of tonight saying I did the deed with this person. And that is like as far as they've gotten. It's not like I don't know anything about this person. I'm not interested in this person. They don't know anything about me. They are a thing that I said to my friends, hey, XYZ happened the other night. High five. And that's about like the equivalent of the exchange that went down.
Oh, those high fives are problematic, but also
they
sometimes,
are.
But also sometimes my partner and I high five each other a little bit.
Well, not
as
all
a joke.
Not all high fives are problematic.
No.
Some celebrating is good, but
I will say I most often encountered that energy in the next tier.
Yeah.
Which is polyamorous relationships.
Okay, so do you want to define poly?
Sure. Polyamorous relationships are people that are non-monogamous with the intention of finding and developing emotional, romantic relationships as well as sexual with other people. So somebody that wants to have a girlfriend and a boyfriend or 2 partners, or it can even expand to 3 partners. There are a lot of different formations in polyamory, and sometimes those formations can be open, meaning that I have 3 very important people in my life and we are all open to meeting more, or I have 3 very important people in my life and we are closed to each other. There's 2 different forms, 2 different forms of polyamory within polyamory.
Yeah, there's a lot of tiers of everything.
Yeah.
There are dynamics like triads, which is sort of in polyamory, if you have your primary partner and then another partner, a secondary partner, in triads, that means both of you are dating the secondary partner.
And they are dating both. Like everybody's dating
everyone's
each other.
dating each other.
And then there are sometimes V's where one person is dating 2 people, but those 2 people are not dating each other.
Right.
It's an open-ended V instead of this triad triangle.
Or just a sort of a March Madness bracket.
We're going to get into some geometry here,
depending
folks.
on how things go. So what does being poly entail?
A lot of shared Google calendars.
Yeah.
If you don't have your organizational skills on point, polyamory is probably not for you.
So I mean, we're getting into the kind of like the pros and cons. Obviously, in a poly space, you really have to sort of like process any feelings of attachment that you have. That's a big one.
Of ownership over your partners.
Yeah. There's also, I think if you're going to step into this poly space, you really have to be, in a lot of ways, very self-sufficient. So there's a lot of codependent people that will step into the poly space, and that's where a lot of issues come up with. So like, for you stepping into a poly space, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, it's really great that I've got this partner, but I also really love this person, and I really want to have the dynamics of everything in our relationship. I don't want any boundaries. That's like a thing that happens in the poly space. That's like the most dangerous thing to say.
Whether it's in the poly space, the dating space, or the kink space, if somebody said, I don't want us to have boundaries, red flag.
Run.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Every single time. People who are experienced with kink and people who are experienced with polyamory relish boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries, as we've talked about before, boundaries are what allow us to be relaxed and vulnerable and free.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else about the...
I will say this. If you are questioning your relationship skills with one person, throwing another person into that dynamic is not going to improve things. The skills that you need to have already set with one partner need to be so solidly in place before you try to extend them to two people at the same time. Me personally, while I am open to the idea of polyamory, I also understand that when it comes to calls, texts, frequent communication with people I'm dating, I literally just don't have the emotional energy or the brain space to dedicate to two people at that tier of emotional commitment. I like having a primary partner that gets most of that attention, and then like people that I very much care about but know not to expect that from me. Some people have the energy to do that. Some people have the energy to engage with people in that way constantly. But
It takes a lot.
it does. And keep in mind, it's kind of like going from one kid to two. It's not just, oh, it's like 1 + 1 = 2. Well, no, because your relationship with this person, that's one relationship. Your relationship with the other person, that's a second relationship. Their relationship with each other, that's a third one.
Yeah.
How they feel about you separately and together, it increases exponentially. So if you are not confident in your ability to believe in your own value outside of what you get from your partners, if you are not confident in your ability to let go of the idea of ownership over your partner and their sexuality, if you are afraid of calling out difficult feelings and having difficult conversations and communication in general, polyamory is not for you at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
It's
and
hard.
and there's also just I've in spaces where I've seen a lot of people go wrong in the poly space is, man, they're airing a lot of their grievances of their relationship now with their new partner, and
I consider that to be a pretty big boundary violation.
yeah, because you're like, oh, I feel safe, and I want to talk with you about all the things that are going on with me, and then everybody sort of like starts becoming at odds with each other.
Yeah.
You know, there are definitely ways of like making it work. There's ways of making a lot of things work.
And there are also ways of making it work when you're not 100% positive in all of your skills. You know,
Right.
we have this thing called speaking in draft, which is, hey, we're all going to come into this assuming that we are all engaging in good faith, which means that absolutely we're allowed to make mistakes, and we're going to give each other the benefit of the doubt that it was a genuine mistake and we're looking to correct it, rather than I'm trying to get away with some hurtful bullshit. And often the key to that, if you are not confident like 100% in all of these skills, above all, be confident in your ability to take accountability and apologize when you do hurt somebody, because it's inevitable.
Yeah.
You're going to hurt the feelings of the people around you. You're going to make a mistake.
All right, let's step into even other. I don't want to say it's like higher league of this.
Well,
More
dynamics.
different
Dive
dynamics.
into different
Okay.
relationship and sexual dynamics.
So there are times where only like one of you is poly, or only one of you is having ongoing relationships, and the relationship is open on one side and closed on the other side. And there's a couple of different tiers even within that space.
Well, there's some occasions of that have nothing to do with a kink dynamic, and then there's some that have a lot to do with a kink dynamic.
Right. So some of them can just be that like, hey, my partner and I have mismatched sex drives. I'm feeling comfortable. I don't really need it as much as they do. It's open for them, but like I'm happy just having my dynamic, or like I'm really focused on work, or I'm really focused on our family,
Or I have a chronic illness. My body isn't. There's so many
There's
different
so many reasons why it may be open on one side and not on the other side. One of the sort of like more kink space thing, which again, it's not new, but it is definitely having a resurgence, which is the two branches of cuckolding and hot wifing. And they're different.
Very different.
They're very different.
Energies and tensions are very different.
Yeah. So the cuckolding space is centered around the fact that, and this can be both male or female or whatever gender dynamics that you have, that your partner is going out and they are having intimate encounters with other people, and the fact that like they're being with all these top tier people and all this stuff, and like you're feeling inadequate, is part of the dynamic that makes it arousing for you.
It's often part of a submission and or humiliation kink.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, which is the same situation but different, there's the sort of like hot wifing, hot husbanding, hot partnering situation, which is, yeah, I know my partner is out there and it's a turn on to me because they're so hot, and and everybody should be with them because look at how amazing they are.
What an unmissable opportunity for the world.
My partner's going to rock your world because they're so great.
And also, I love how slutty my partner is.
Yeah.
Look at what they're doing to all these different people and how much they're loving it.
And that's done as like an ego boost of like, I've got the hottest, sexiest partner in the whole world.
In that case, a sense of ownership is part of the kink that is consensually agreed to by both parties. And also in that sense, like as the active partner in that dynamic, you are agreeing to being fetishized at some level. But again, if that's something that turns you on and it's something that you've consented to, A-okay.
Yeah. Okay. And in the last tier of this, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different relationship dynamics in the kink space, but I think we should save that for its own.
That can be its own thing.
Its own episode. But
we're going to move on to transactional sexual dynamics.
Yeah. So big thing, sex work is work, and it serves a really valuable, what is it? Valuable thing in the community. I don't just want to say thing.
It meets a variation of very real and very valid human needs.
Yeah. So again, this exists, and part of the reason why you put it in the relationship dynamic space is because we all end up in tons of different situations. So it's like you might be with your partner and they may no longer be able to have sex, or they, for whatever reason, are not interested anymore. They don't want the potential threat of outside people in the dating space, but they say, okay, I get that when you married me or we entered into our long relationship that you weren't signing up to never have sex for the rest of your life.
Or there's a very specific kink that one partner has that the other partner doesn't share. So they say, you know what, I don't want to deprive you of having this need met, but I don't want to do it. So go ahead and hire somebody to have that specific need met.
Yeah. And I like Dan Savage's way of talking about sex workers, which is like, you're not paying them for them to be there, you're paying for them to go away.
Well, you're
you're
paying them to have a very strong set of boundaries.
Incredible set of boundaries.
A predictable set of boundaries that they will lay out for you.
Yeah. But in that phrase though, it's like part of the reasons why monogamous couples will involve sex work, or single people that don't have that either are struggling with something, that are like not ready to be in a partner space. And in that situation, what a great thing to go, hey, guess what? I'm not ready to enter into a space where I am emotionally available or whatever it is I'm going through. Hiring a sex worker is saying, I still am a person that wants to experience connection. Having this experience is really important and valuable to me. And then I don't have to show up in all of the other ways that are essential, that are like in a relationship, that like, that's how we pay in regular relationships. We're paying with our time, with our energy and our attention and our focus. This is just like, what if I just gave you money?
Instead of emotional investment.
Instead of emotional investment.
And also, what if I pay you money to create? Remember we talked about that checklist? Well, guess what?
This is where you can do the checklist.
This is where you can have your checklist.
Do your checklist.
Because you are being upfront about it, and because you are compensating somebody for their skill and time in giving you the things on that checklist.
This is where, as an individual or as a couple, you can walk into a space and say, hello, other person. We would like to do X, Y, and Z. I would like to give you this money for X, Y, and Z. And then everyone goes, great. And then that's what you'll do. And in that way, you can sink into it because you're not dealing with the same sort of like threesome dynamic that you were before, of like,
the emotional involvement and the pitfalls and the one of the amazing things about engaging with a sex worker, and my partner and I have hired multiple sex workers to enjoy together and separately, is that those boundaries can be so clearly laid out that there are no surprises. And also that you don't have to worry about, like, this person texting them out of the blue, like drunk texting them a week later. Just all of those things where you usually feel defensive about when inviting a new person into your dynamic. Sex workers just like take the stress out of it, man. And not only that, but like, you can have the freedom to pick and choose the visual appeal, the personality dynamic that you're looking for. There are so many options.
But what is the way that you do it ethically and consensually?
So I just want to be clear about something, that trafficking and non-consensual sex work absolutely exists. But consensual sex work exists also. And in my experience, one of the ways that you can best tell that you are hiring a sex worker who is engaging in this work consensually is to go to the appropriate places and look for online presences that they have that is not tied to a brothel, that is not tied to a company. So a couple of what we call independent worker sites, and sex worker, another popular term that's used in the community is escort or companion. Please eliminate the word hooker from your vocabulary.
Sure.
It's just kind of rude. Like, not thrilled with that term.
Yeah. It's very old.
Very old. It's very dated. But there are 3 sites. They are called Tryst, Tryst, Eros, Eros, and Slixa, Slixa. And that can be a great place to just scan through. I'm looking for someone between these ages with this color hair who's open to a threesome dynamic, open to whatever, and you can just kind of scan through. And the additional reassurance you have that this person is working independently and consensually is if they have some kind of website or online presence. I know Twitter has been a hellfire in recent weeks.
Twitter is a hellfire.
But Twitter is also a place where you can go, and many sex workers will have profiles where you can kind of get to know a little bit more about their personality and what they're into and what kind of energy they'll be bringing into the space. Another thing to look for, websites. If you are hiring a sex worker, please look for a website, because not only will the website tell you almost everything you need to know about what an experience with them will be like, they will list their boundaries. They will list exactly how to get in touch with them, exactly what the pricing of their presence will be, and it just leaves a lot of guessing games out of it. And if you can contact them through their preferred methods, sometimes it's text, sometimes it's email. What I will say about text and email, don't put in writing super specific sexual things. That's generally frowned upon, because they are just offering their time and presence.
Yes.
And anything else that happens is negotiated between 2 consenting adults.
Right.
But that usually will tell you that this is who this person is, this is what I can expect, this is what I expect to pay, what I expect to be charged, and you can kind of go from there. So look for social media presence, look for a website, and try to, if you know how to reverse Google image search an image, try to make sure that that name is associated with that picture and it's just one name.
Yeah.
Because that, when scams can sometimes happen when photos of people are stolen.
Right. Well,
so just some things to watch out for.
Great tips. So listen, everybody. Part of throwing this conversation out there is just creating a space where we all find ourselves in a myriad of situations. one of the interesting things, I was just listening to a podcast about the LGBT movement getting, trying to get the marriage passed.
Yes.
And one of the things that it was talking about, which I found really interesting, was a lot of resources went into that space, and not many resources went into trying to sort of like change our sort of like legal marriage reward system, because people have different dynamics. Some people are like, I don't speak with my family anymore. I live with a roommate, and I want my roommate to have access to these things. And we're not in a sexually dynamic relationship, but that doesn't mean that we can't legally be with each other. Or people are in companionate marriages where they are together, but they aren't intimate with each other, and then
But there is a very deep emotional.
But there is a deep
there.
emotional connection there, and they may or may not create space for outside needs being met or whatever. But the bigger picture is, there are so many ways that you can have connection, have a life that you want to live, and I will also emphasize, each of these different things that we talked about are only possible with the right people. So again, I said at the top that like you might find a relationship model that you really like, that really works for you. However, you might find a person that you have a connection with, and then you go, you know what? I would love to explore this connection, but this person will not be a good person for an open relationship.
This person does not have the communication skills. This person does not have the self-actualization and knowledge. There's so many things that need to be in place.
It wouldn't work for them and it would work for me, and then I have to go, okay, is the price of admission that we're going to be monogamous for the period of time that we're together, am I willing to pay that price of admission? And like, yeah, sure. Sometimes you do. And so, or sometimes you've gotten into a relationship and the relationship has gone on for a very long time, and then you go, you know what? We're 10 years into this thing. There's a part of my life that I'm like really feeling bummed about missing. Can we have a conversation that is going to create space? And that's the biggest thing. Is there a way that we can create space in our dynamic that we've established that can allow for some of these things that I'm looking for to add back into my life?
To add into your life. That's the key, not replace.
Yeah.
Opening up your relationship is not a solution to when you are feeling distant from your partner, to when you're feeling like your bond with your partner is not solid.
Right.
Your relationship with your partner is the ice cream sundae. Including other people is the whipped cream and the cherry on top. But you have to have the foundation first.
Well, thank you all for joining us.
I hope we've given you a lot to think about over the holidays.
Yeah. And the big thing of like why we are here is to sort of like continue to expand people's knowledge about the space, because relationships are not something that are like taught and that people even like really talk about in a lot of spaces. And we want to know that there are tools available to you. There are people available to you.
And there are options available to you outside of what you might have previously thought a relationship can look like. There are so many different options.
Yeah.
And you can forge the relationship that fits you and fits your partner/partners.
And you can do it safely
and consensually.
All right. Well, thank you all again. We're going to be taking a break over the holiday.
I'm disappearing into the snows of Colorado.
Yeah,
and I will not be coming back out for 2 weeks.
Yeah, we're gonna go recharge, take some time to process some things. Enjoy spending time with your loved ones, whoever they are.
And if not, enjoy spending some time with your damn self.
Yeah, get it. All right. That's how we're ending it. That's it.
We're adults.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.